We welcome Jeff Cameron from Warchant, and sad day in Tallahassee because Jordan Travis was the heart and soul of the Florida State program. Gruesome injury on Saturday night. Obviously, he's not going to be back this season. Where's everybody at in Tallahassee this morning, Jeff?
I think their heart aches for Jordan Travis. Obviously, this is a good kid who's worked really hard and transformed his game, really transformed the position for Florida State. This was a program struggling at the time that Jordan Travis came here, to say the least. And he bought into Mike Norvell right from the jump. And even if Mike wasn't sure about him early on, you saw Jordan kind of weather the storm, for lack of a better term. He was a kid who got some starts, then he was benched. Then he got back out there as a starter. Fan base wasn't real sure what kind of quarterback he was. They knew he was a great athlete, obviously, but they needed to see him throw the ball from the pocket consistently. And man, did he really work hard on that aspect of his game, Andy. So everybody saw it happen. It played out in real time over the last 2 years. Obviously, Florida State's won a lot of football games in large part because of Jordan Travis. And to see him go down on senior night like that, on a night that was supposed to be celebratory, a night where we were honoring the seniors, but significantly Jordan Travis, who is a guy that I think embodies what Florida State became, obviously, over these last 2 years. And so a lot of fans obviously were devastated. It was hard to feel good after a win last night for Florida State fans because all that was on their mind was the injury to Jordan Travis.
Well, and you think about this guy. So here's a guy who transferred from Louisville when Willie Taggart was still the coach.
Yeah.
And when the Mike Norvell staff gets there, Jordan Travis is like, hey, I'll change positions if you want me to. Like, the idea of him being the guy who would lead them back to real national contention just seems so foreign back then. And the idea of them getting back here seems so foreign. So I can't imagine what that team is going through trying to process this because they've come so far with him.
They have, and he is beloved by his teammates. When Mike runs an open practice so that we in the press are lucky enough to be at every practice, and he's fine with that. Obviously, there's certain rules, but you get to see relationships form. You get to watch how people respond to each other. This team, to a man, across the board, responds to Jordan Travis's leadership. And he's a quiet leader. He does it mainly just by practicing hard every day, being consistent, being there. And Jordan's a guy that I think, represents Florida State's turnaround. And they've rode that wave of emotion and later on to victory these last 2 years with him. So to see him go down, you could see it on the players' faces last night, Andy. That was a group that you had kids that were in tears. I saw Trey Benson was nearly inconsolable. There are a lot of guys that respect what Jordan Travis has done for this program, for them, and then also for himself, turning his career into something that every Florida State fan will remember forever. And he's in the record books across the board for Florida State and the ACC. If you look at those numbers, they're mind-boggling.
It is amazing that's where he winds up, but it just sucks that he can't finish it out. There's no way to put it. I mean, it really sucks. Now, Tate Rodemaker comes in, plays well, leads them to. They were down 13-0 when Tate got in the game, which I thought you kind of forget because of the injury. Played well, led them to a win. Played well last year when he was thrown into that situation at Louisville on a Friday night. But Tate's been a career backup, and now he's got to lead them to a win against Florida and a win against Louisville if they want to make the college football playoff.
Yeah, you wonder what the committee will do. It's a fair thing to assess, right? I mean, if a team loses their starting quarterback, who also happens to be a Heisman candidate, he's an All-American type player, how can you not look at that team differently? Florida State fans are probably very nervous that even if they win out, that they may get overlooked because of Jordan Travis not being able to play at the most important position on the field. And he's been electrifying. He's the reason Florida State is undefeated. He's one of the reasons, but he is the key reason. And so you do wonder how they're going to view Florida State. There's no doubt Florida State has to win these next two games to get in. They have to be undefeated because the ACC strength is not where it should be, and obviously doesn't compare to, say, a Pac-12 with Washington or, maybe Oregon, even with their one loss. If they avenge Washington, you wonder if they would jump Florida State. Probably not if Florida State's undefeated. But first things first, you got to go win a football game against a rival who's fighting for bowl eligibility, and you got to go do it on the road in a hostile place at night with a brand new quarterback. Now, Tate's played, and he's been in situations, as you alluded to, but he's not had to start a game like this. And Florida, we know Florida's going to fight like hell to try to get bowl eligible and have at least a 500 season. So you're going to get the best version of Florida, and we'll see how Tate responds to that.
Well, and now Florida also will be playing with a backup quarterback. So Max Brown had to come in and replace Graham Mertz on Saturday night. So we don't know what either offense is going to look like, though. I would say the Johnny Wilson, Keon Coleman, Jaheim Bell trio probably trumps the Ricky Pearsall and Trey Wilson and the two-headed monster of Montrell Johnson and Trevor Etienne in the backfield. But I do think we might see a shootout in the Swamp.
I woke up this morning thinking that. I really did. I feel like Florida State's defense is good, but it's not great. They've gotten by against some bad teams, and they've done enough. They've done more than enough. If you look at the numbers, it's kind of deceiving. You would think Florida State has a dominant defense. I don't think it's dominant. I think it's okay. It's pretty good. But I do think Florida's going to score, and I do think Florida State will score because everybody has on Florida, and there are a lot of weapons for Florida State and for listen, I think you simplify this thing and you probably still move the ball pretty well because you got a lot of guys that make plays. And I will say this, Tate is not a statue. They can get him out and run him. He's a good athlete. So I wouldn't be surprised if you see some of that to kind of get him into the flow of the game early on.
Well, and you just saw Florida having to deal with a special receiver and some pretty good complementary parts because Luther Burden probably is your Keon Coleman equivalent. And what did Luther Burden do? He caught a pass on 4th and 17 that saved the game for Missouri. So I do think Keon Coleman probably can put up some numbers against this defense. And then we see what Johnny Wilson and everybody else can do too. But yeah, it's interesting because I wonder what the stadium's even going to look like. Because I know the game sold out last week, but my suspicion was it was going to be a lot of Florida State fans.
Really?
But I mean, look, it's interesting because I sensed more criticism from Florida fans of Billy Napier and his staff after the Missouri loss than after the LSU loss, which kind of surprised me because they actually played really well against Missouri until the last 45 seconds.
Yeah, they were in position to win the game. Yeah. And not many people thought that was going to be possible. I mean, I know going into that game, just look at the number, look at the spread. I mean, most people thought Mizzou would run roughshod over Florida, and that didn't happen.
Well, and that's what I think is interesting about this. Like Florida State, in terms of makeup and fight, and that's you don't have to worry about it. You already know what they are because they've proven it 3 years in a row. Like even when they had a really rough start in 2021, they just kept fighting. When they had that losing streak in the middle of the season last year, they kept. So you know what this team is made up of. Florida, it's so young, you don't know that yet. I actually thought it was a really encouraging sign from Florida that they didn't quit after the LSU game, went to Missouri, really good team, played hard, should have won the game. The question will be, after getting gut punched like that, can they get off the mat? We know Florida State can. We don't know if Florida can.
You know, I think it's fair to say, and my guess in this situation, Andy, is that, and I don't know, I'm not in Florida's locker room. I don't get to see their practices, so it's hard for me to know how they'll respond to another close loss. But I do know what you just said is accurate regarding Florida State. They are tough. They're very tough. And I think this will galvanize them. I have a suspicion that they'll rally around Tate. There are a lot of good players on that football team who've been through a lot, and they don't want it to end this way. I think they will play hard. They'll play well. We'll see if that's enough to get a win. But I suspect that toughness will show itself on Saturday down in the Swamp. They'll come out ready to play. And Mike is a good play caller. He's really good at kind of catering to people's strengths. He knows what he's had Tate here for a long time. He knows what he can and can't do. I think he'll have a game plan ready. They'll score. It's just a matter of whether or not they can get some stops.
Well, and also at this point, Florida State trying to flip some guys from Florida in that 2024 recruiting class. One game doesn't decide those things, and everybody thinks it does, but it certainly doesn't hurt if you can win that game.
Yeah, and this is an opportunity I think Mike has to take advantage of. You know, you said it at the outset when we were talking. It seems like these two teams can't be good at the same time, and it's frustrating because you really want to see those games of yesteryear in the 90s, right? Those great matchups. Just hasn't happened. When Florida State's been down, Florida was up, and when Florida went down, Florida State came up, and it's been interesting. But when you have a program like Florida in transition and a coach trying to find his way, and he's struggling right now, obviously, and the verdict is still out there. We don't know what's going to happen with Napier. That's a brutal schedule next year, right? You have to, if you're Mike Norvell and the staff, seize the opportunity to win the recruiting wars in the state. This is how this is how you step on somebody when they're down. And it's what Urban Meyer did to Florida State when he was in Gainesville.
And it's what Jimbo did at the end of the Urban Meyer era.
That's right. It's we've seen this play out. You and I have covered these teams for a long time, and we're very familiar with this rivalry. This is when you have an opportunity to do real damage off the field by winning recruits over, flipping guys at the last second, getting them on your sideline, adding to the misery of your rival.
It will be miserable for whoever loses this game because Florida needs this to be bowl eligible. And obviously, if Florida State loses, it's devastating because it probably ends the national title chances, ends the CFP chances, just because I think everybody's looking for excuses to knock the ACC out of there.
Yeah.
And you got to have the undefeated champ. Like Louisville, I don't even think if they win, they would need massive chaos everywhere else because they have the worst loss of any of the contenders. But yeah, it would be devastating and will be devastating to whoever loses this game. I'm curious, Jeff. So Tate's the starter now for Florida State. Mm-hmm. If something were to happen to him, who comes in?
It's a good question, Andy. I think Brock Glenn is the answer to that question. Brock was really on an upwardly mobile trajectory at the start of camp. I mean, this kid came in and right away showcased a strong arm and an understanding of the offense rather quickly. I think that may be one of his greatest strengths is that he came in here and learned Mike's offense pretty fast. And I think that probably moved him past Duffy if we look at the quarterback depth chart. Now, the problem with Brock is that he got hurt in his first game that he ever played in. And he was not really in a position to be able to help this team at all for a number of weeks. Basically, they had to surgically repair his hand. And so he's okay now. He got in the game and played well. And you've seen him. He's an athlete. He's a big, strong kid. Looks like he's fully recovered from that injury. But I wonder how much he was set back by not being able to participate for about 6 weeks.
It's such a strange situation. And I'm thinking about in the playoff era, we have not seen, except for the first year of the playoff, a quarterback go down and somebody have to come in. Very famously, that first year, you had JT Barrett, who himself had started camp as a backup quarterback, but he goes down in the Michigan game, and then Cardell Jones comes in and leads Ohio State to a national title. But in the next 9 seasons, we don't really see anything like that.
Yeah, and it's surprising it doesn't happen more often. Football's a brutal game, as we all know. People get hurt. It happens all the time. And, we've been really lucky as fans to get the best version of most of these teams with their starting quarterbacks in there, as you alluded to. It is interesting to point that out, that Ohio State situation, because, this is a team that does have a lot of weapons, and Tate has been around the program forever. He could come in and play really well. I don't know. I don't think Florida State people would be stunned if Tate Rodemaker comes in and plays well. They've seen him do that. Now, again, he's not Jordan Travis. Very few people are. But can he operate the offense? I think so. Yes, I think he can operate the offense. In some ways, he operates the passing offense, the drop back passing offense, a little bit better at times. He spreads the ball out a little bit more. So it'd be interesting to see who his favorite targets are. He's got plenty to choose from, though, as you pointed to.
Well, we've never seen him with a full week with the ones either. And the background on Tate Rodemaker is when Mike Norvell got the job, Tate Rodemaker's from Valdosta, Georgia. He's somebody that Norvell had liked as Memphis's head coach, but had not really been able to get any kind of traction with because it was Memphis. And he gets the Florida State job, and all of a sudden, here's this school that it's a little bit down, but it's a one-time powerhouse that's an hour from your house. And Tate jumped on it.
Yeah, Mike likes him a lot. Mike coaches kids hard. And if you're at these practices, he lets loose. Now, not abusively, but if he believes in you He coaches you hard, and he tells you, I'm going to get the best out of you. We're going to get the best out of you, and you're going to work. Why do I bring that up? Well, Tate's been on the other end of a number of lectures, to put it kindly. You've heard one of them, I know. Tate's been through the fire. He's heard a lot from Mike Norvell, but the point would be Mike would not do that if he didn't think he could play, if he didn't like him. He would have just moved on by now. And he never has moved on. He's quick to correct people when they ask questions about Brock Glenn and how well Brock has played. And there's the intimation that maybe Brock is now the backup. And you'll hear Mike when he answers questions. He says, Brock's doing a great job. Luckily, we have a real experienced player like Tate Rodemaker as our backup. He will always point that out. So, because he likes Tate. So, Tate's been through a lot, and he's handled it really well. I think he'll respond.
Will be a wild game in Gainesville. Not what we were expecting at all. And good luck to Jordan Travis as he gets better. But this is going to be very, very interesting these next couple of weeks for Florida State. Jeff, thank you so much.
My pleasure, Andy. Good to talk to you, buddy.
Thank you so much for watching. Just a reminder, subscribe to this channel right here so you never miss an episode of Andy Staples on 3. And oh, by the way, watch all the other great videos on the On3 Sports YouTube channel.